how you have helped business to grow fast and consistent in your leadership.
We start by asking, what are we actually trying to achieve? What are we measuring, and who's accountable?
What qualities do you look for in
It's been
your team to lead and create?
I think in terms of like what I prioritize over qualities when looking for future leaders or team members is mindset over resume. I think I look for people who are curious, who take responsibility, and certainly aren't afraid to ask questions.
So apart from financial reporting, what kind of other reporting this industry needs?
We are very, very data focused. We're primarily a sales company, so we have live data on what quotes we have open, our pipeline of opportunities, what stage they're at, how long have we been in that stage.
Hello, Andrew.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the Executive Outlook. We are so excited to have you here. So tell us something about yourself, how you started, what's your journey?
My name is Andrew Stratton. I'm originally from London in England. I live in Dubai, UAE, and I've been here since 2012. I joined the company IRE back in 2012 as employee number 2 straight out of university, not really knowing what the journey ahead would look like. In the early days, you do a bit of everything in the company. That gave me a front row seat to see how a business really runs. And over the years, as the company's grown, so has my role. And I stepped into leadership, not by title, but by necessity, and figuring out how to build those systems, support a growing team, and drive sustainable results. And that experience of growing the business from the ground up has shaped how I think about scaling culture and operational discipline as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. Tell me that how you have helped business to grow fast and consistent and in your leadership. So what is your everyday challenges that you are encountering which helped the business to grow further?
I think the first thing I look for when we're trying to focus on and trying to boost results is clarity. In fast-moving results, it's rarely a lack of effort that are holding people back. It's often a lack of focus. So we start by asking, what are we actually trying to achieve? What are we measuring, and who's accountable? And I think I remember a time when things felt busy, but progress was hard to pin down. We introduced a simple weekly meeting of 5 key numbers on the whiteboard, and that alone changed the tone. People weren't pointing fingers or guessing. We were talking about the facts, data. People felt more in control, and it gave them a clear sense of how they contributed to the bigger picture. So from there, it's about removing the friction, whether that's streamlining the process, clarifying roles, or improving how teams collaborate. It always starts with that clarity, because when people know what matters, what good looks like, then they bring more energy, more ownership, and more ideas.
So true. Thank you for sharing that. So in one's personal leadership lesson, so what you wish you have learned it earlier in your career?
I think, I know it's always a good question to reflect on what you've learned and what you would tell your younger self. And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that as a leader, your role isn't to have all the answers. It's often just to ask better questions and give others the space to find their own. I think early on, I thought being a good leader meant solving problems quickly, and stepping in when something wasn't right. It felt efficient, I could get things done, but I didn't realize I was unintentionally creating that dependency. And that changed when I started taking a more coaching-based approach. So instead of giving people the answer, I'd ask, what do you think is the best way forward? Or what's blocking you? And at first, it definitely felt slower, but over time, you see that shift when people become more confident, more resourceful, and certainly more accountable. They have ownership in the process and the outcomes. So I definitely think that's a thing I wish I'd learned earlier. Leadership isn't about fixing, it's about building others' capacity to lead.
Exactly. I think you made a very good point here. And there is the proven, techniques that you should ask 5 whys. What is blocking you? Why it is blocking you, right? And if the person answers, okay, this is why it is blocking, then why? Then why? And if you will ask 5 times whys, you'll get the answer, right? Mostly in second, third whys, right? So this is exactly. So I went to one of the sessions and they were using this technique. Like someone had the question and they were answering their own questions, right? So that was amazing. Like we as a human being have all the answers. It's just we just need a validation. Okay, is it what I am thinking in the right direction? So that is exactly what it is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think often people become complacent, and if they don't see the value of their role and they know that you can just go to someone else to get the answers, then they'll always lean on that crutch. And I like what you mentioned about those five whys, and that's what we do, often with a root cause analysis, especially within, quality business management systems and ISO accreditation. When you notice or you flag an NCR or non-conformance, or whether it's minor, major, or opportunity for improvement, you really have to dig into that root cause of why something's happening. And that's the same thing when you're having those conversations with people.
This is a very good point. I have not thought in this perspective that we can use this technique in order to understand the business problems in data. Like we have the data in front of us and why this is happening. What is it? Then this will be very effective with decision making.
Yeah, and it's that clarity of data. And if you can't trust in the data that you have and the numbers you're looking at, then there's no way to do it. So that's the first point. But once you have that data, you can always dig down and figure out why something's happening or what you might be able to change.
I mean, this is exactly the core is data should be relevant, should be trustable. Yeah, and then we can have it. Exactly. Thank you so much. I mean, this is a great leadership lesson, and I got to know from different perspective also. Yeah. So, if in a leader, you want to hire your team members, which you want to become the future leader. Let's think in that perspective. So, what qualities do you look for in your teammates?
Yeah, I think it's been
Your team to lead, create the second line of leadership.
Yeah, I think it's been a learning process over the years, and I think another reality that you come to realize when you're growing a team or growing a company is that you are in whatever industry you are, you have whatever business model you have, but you are always recruiting. You are a recruiting company before anything else, because if you don't have that pipeline or that ability to bring the right people on board, then you'll fail. So we've definitely switched things around. But I think in terms of like what I prioritize over when the different qualities when looking for future leaders or team members is mindset over the resume. I think I look for people who are curious, who take responsibility, and certainly aren't afraid to ask questions. This is such an important point in a growing business. You can train for skills, and those skills that are required are changing so quickly, especially now with the advent and speed of AI especially. You need people who are switched on, who are certainly open to learning, feedback, criticism, and are comfortable working across different teams and people from different backgrounds and different skill sets. I think for leadership roles, also look for a balance. You want someone who pushes for the results, but also knows how to listen and bring people with them. Because as I mentioned before, leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about creating that environment where others can thrive. And I think that's often the challenge for people who transition from a doing role to a leading role or a management role. You can have a fantastic salesperson who then gets promoted to a sales manager. But then they have to learn the manage that transition from they're not getting the sales, they are enabling other people to do their job. And that's definitely a lesson I remind all our leaders in the organization. And I think one of the best hires that we've made didn't come from with all the usual credentials. In the interview, they asked the right questions about how we worked, how we measured success, and what customers cared about. And that mindset made a bigger impact than any job title. And to see that particular person's growth over the last 5 years, actually, since he joined, is incredible. It's transformational, and it's certainly one of the best hires. And he's become a leader in the organization when he was joined, when he was hired in a very, very junior role. You could see from some of the answers and the way he conversed in those interviews that there was a diamond in the rough there for sure.
I think I totally agree with you. And I think you made a point there that before starting a business, every business is a recruitment fund. I mean, that's so true. And let me add my thoughts here. Whenever I interview people, I check for the problem solving skills also and problem solving skills, and then next skill is the logical skills. These two are my core, because people will be able to drive logically. If they have not got the answer, they can search it in order to get the answers. All right, so this is whenever I look, this is one of the factors I can see.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's, in the culture, in the business environment I work in the Middle East, there's a tendency for people not to have accountability or not be able to take ownership of their own actions. So getting people to change their mindset in terms of, okay, I don't know the answer, but if you're going to come to me with a problem, or I try and remind them that like we hired them for their knowledge, that they're intelligent people, they have their own ideas. So I always want to hear what their suggestion is. I encourage them that it's never a question of like, okay, 9 times out of 10 I agreed with you, or only 1 time out of 10. But I don't want you just to come to me with a problem. I want you to have thought about, well, what would you do if I wasn't here, or your manager wasn't here? Have a go at thinking about the solution, even if it's not one that we eventually go with, just to exercise those muscles for sure.
So you are into the segment of oil and gas. So what are the problems that normally comes in your business which you solve with data?
I think, there's no specific problems. I think just generally, as I touched upon before, I think for a business or a company to remain flexible and agile, again, especially in today's environment where progress and advancements are happening so quickly, you really need to have a lens or a view as to what the current state is. And if you don't have that, or there's a lagging effect, and that you can only, I think financial reporting is great, but it's after the fact. You need to know what's going on right now. We do a lot of work in pulling pulling data and creating dashboards so people can see that, as accurate as possible, to then make decisions as we go along. So we're not making decisions after the fact, which has no impact on what's already happened. So it's certainly that visibility of data integrity, making sure what you're looking at is you can have confidence in those numbers. Because if there's any question in anyone's mind that something's maybe not accurate, then you lose all ability to have confidence in your decision making.
So, that's great. You mentioned the real-time insights is needed, not the obsolete ones, because it impacts the decisions. So, apart from financial reporting, what kind of other reporting this industry needs?
We are very, very data focused. So we're primarily a sales company. So we have live data on what quotes we have open, our pipeline of opportunities, what stage they're at, how long have they been in that stage, the conversion rates. So we're looking at like, okay, which customers are more likely to convert into an order, the time it takes to get a proposal or a quotation to a customer. Then we look, once we've got the orders, it's, okay, how accurate are we in fulfilling that order? And then after the fact, it's, how quickly can we get our invoice to them? And then how quickly can we close that period of being in receivables? So we have metrics across the board, and KPIs for pretty much everyone in the organization, down to the warehouse guy who may be the most junior role. And I think that ability for someone to have a number or something they're aiming for and a clear sight of what part they play in the bigger picture allows people to have ownership and really feel that they have a role to play in the larger organization. Because it can get quite hard to build that sense of belonging or sense of purpose in a larger organization. We're 20 people, so we're not huge, but it's still super, super important that everyone knows what role they're playing and what they're aiming for and what part that plays in the bigger picture.
Every organization wants to be like that, to work collect. This is called OKRs, right? So
Yeah.
they have an objective, key goals. Every single person has the goals, and which is contributing to the measure goal. According to their roles and responsibilities, they are working on it. Right? This is what we are being implemented in your
Exactly, yes.
organization. So a follow-up question on this, that you mentioned that you measure KPIs across all the departments, sales, marketing, and then finances. So in your department, what are the KPIs you are right now focusing on, which you are measuring for as a success?
Well, as the GM and also the COO, I really only have one major KPI, and that's the bottom line. But on a non-financial measure, I'm looking at staff retention. Are we able to keep our staff? Not keep our staff, keep our staff engaged, keep our staff developing, making sure they're growing. I look at, I guess just, I think from my role is, it's a little bit boring in terms of what I'm looking at. I have to ultimately look at the bottom line, because if the bottom line isn't there, then there's no there's no business there. So from that, then we'll break it down into different departments. So we have company goals, strategic objectives that we're aiming for over the year, and then we break that down into company goals that everyone can see of, and then each department's goals cascade down from those company goals, and then you have department goals and they cascade down to the individual goals. So it's a whole ecosystem. So it's not like they're separated. So my job is to make sure that everyone has ownership over their goal, feels that they can contribute, and and I guess my over KPI is making sure that we're on track in as many as we can. And then if we're not, okay, let's focus down and, like you said before, ask those whys. Let's figure out why we're not on track. What do we need to change? What do we need to alter? How can we support you better to get back on track?
Amazing. So, a question. Many organizations want to implement this strategy, right? That everyone should have goals, everyone should have their own responsibilities. So, any ideas how we can implement it, how the companies can implement this strategy?
Again, I think it comes back to clarity. You have to all be aligned on what you're aiming for. So how we've done that, again, is to set those strategic objectives, five key areas that we're focusing on for the year. Then you break it down. So I think, again, it's clarity, it's transparency. As a company, we do quarterly updates for the whole team. We're very, very transparent with our financials, how much money we're making, where we're at in our budget. And I think that transparency just builds that sense of trust. So people feel, again, it's all about ownership, accountability. If people understand the role that they play, then it becomes a lot easier to set those KPIs. If people aren't involved in setting those KPIs or key results, then it's just something that's been told to them. They have no ownership, no involvement in it, and then there's a disconnect. So companies can't set these things top down. They can set overall objectives, and then you need to really get the involvement of your team and your employees of going, okay, that's what we're aiming for as a company. How can I impact that? Okay, this is what I can focus on. And it's incredible the effectiveness of when people are involved in that process, as opposed to, okay, here's the management team. This is what you're aiming for. This is what happens if you don't do it. It just doesn't work like that.
Because I remember, like, when we were, we started. So we tried to implement the strategy to create the organization goal and to break it down into different departments. Because at that time we were starting the company and lot of things were there. We were making out the processes. We were making out these things. So eventually this strategy didn't work for us. Right. And we have to drop that plan because it was consuming a lot of time. And when we implement the first time, it takes lot of time. Then slowly and steadily, we realized what didn't work well in these things. And then, second time, we re-approached the things with a different perspective. It took time. It was 50% there. People were, what is happening? Why there are goals, why there are things. But when we implemented the third time, then people are used to it. And then they responded in a different perspective. And they started accepting the change. And now things are very much stabilized, and the organization is going towards one objective, and then the main objectives, and then they're working on their own. So that is why I asked this question, because normally people face a lot of challenges in the implementation, and you mentioned it correctly that with clarity, with transparency, it can happen. It is difficult to align the whole organization, but slowly and steadily this can make a change.
Yeah, I think you touched upon an important point there, that you can have all these great ideas, and it's about change management. And it's just because you implement a system or it should have 100% success, it doesn't mean people will use it. And I think adoption only happens when people understand the why behind the change and they are involved in shaping it. Like I said, in terms of the KPIs, I think it's, we've made a point to involve all the end users, listen to where their pain points are, and then it's so important to break that down into manageable stages, because a big implementation or a big project, like you touched upon before, big strategic push, it's too insurmountable of a mountain where all you need to focus on, okay, what are the first few steps you're going to take? So I think, again, as a leader, your role is to lead the change and not just deliver the system. And, you have to keep focus on what those outcomes are, reduce the friction, and make sure everyone feels supported along the way. And that's the only way you can really affect true change in an organization.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right. So these were all the questions I want to ask, Andrew. And thank you so much for sharing your insights today with us. And I wish you all the best for building the high performing team, driving real results and innovation. And we look forward for your continued success.
Thank you very much, Isha. It's been a pleasure discussing this with you this morning. Thank you again.